Hello, I'm a talking head. I belong to Mr. Watkins. Hello, I'm also a talking head. I also belong to Mr. Watkins. I teach senior seminar. Oh, really? You do too? Is it a good class? It is a good class. It's a fun class. It's interesting. You read cool literature. You read about epics and fairy tales, fantasy literature. You go on a lot of journeys. Magic. You learn a lot. You really do.
So, when we talk to incoming seniors, we do like to remind you that the myth of not doing work in senior year English is just that, a myth. Anywhere you go, you cannot escape it. But here at Oceanside, you get to pick your own poison.
Seminar A, Utopian and Dystopian Literature and Fantasy and Fairy Tales. Seminar B, Graphic Novels, Horrors, Monsters in Society. Seminar C, The World According to Shakespeare and Contemporary Literature.
Hi, I'm Mr. Perry and I teach the graphic novel course here at the high school. What is a graphic novel, you may ask? Well, a graphic novel is a text that marries both words and images. This text is Watchmen. It's one of the texts that we'll be reading throughout the year. In addition to Watchmen, we'll be reading graphic novels such as The Arrival, V for Vendetta, and Mouse. The graphic novel course is a class that's a traditional English class with a twist. In addition to the words, we also have images to analyze. So if you like comics or if you like artwork, this might be the class for you. And even if you don't, you might want to give it a shot.
Fear or horror. What are you afraid of?
Hi, my name is Miss Grogan. I teach currently the Gothic and Horror class. One of the elements of Gothic horror is an exploration of what we as human beings fear. Fear can be rooted in the external environment, monsters, haunted houses, gloomy, scary settings. But also some of the things we fear are internal fears. Fear of death, fear of not being accepted within society, and it's a psychological examination of all that we are afraid of throughout time. You will find that there are common elements in Gothic horror, most of them dealing with what is real and what is sort of fantasy. And fear really plays on whether or not we know something is real or whether it's unreal. We work with texts such as Frankenstein, Dracula, Picture of Dorian Gray, Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House. And not only do we explore this concept of fear and monstrosity in literature, we also chart its progression throughout film. And we can see how this genre develops and expands. And ultimately, we come to an understanding that horror in general, what we're afraid of, is something that's common throughout time. If you're interested in films such as Insidious, Amityville Horror, The Exorcist, this is the class for you because we will then explore this genre and how it evolves into this horror film industry that is wildly popular today. If you're interested in exploring the dark side of humanity, this is really, this is the class for you.
Mrs. Frasca, I teach fairy tales and fantasy.
I'm Mrs. Schuline, and I teach Utopias or Dystopias.
So sometimes on a Friday night, she and I will get into an intense text conversation about certain aspects of Lord of the Rings, like why is it that Gandalf never tells anybody that he's actually more than just a wizard? And then we talk about, does he actually have power in this universe, and is he sculpting a world of his own making?
I think about the petty things, so would I rather be an elf or something with furry feet? I think an elf is much more glamorous, intellectual, and exciting. Kind of like vampires. They're selfish, they're cold, and they love beautiful things.
But they're always so graceful too. Now, if you have no idea what we're talking about, but it kind of sounds interesting, you might want to take Seminar A in senior year.
Because what's interesting is fairy tales and fantasy and utopian dystopian coursework all are about the possible future, be it bleak or be it something beautiful that we're creating that we couldn't even imagine having right now. In dystopias and utopias, we'll read works like Fahrenheit 451, or 1984, or Brave New World, or Harrison Bergeron, or I Am Legend, The Walking Dead. We might be watching such films as Moon, Ex Machina, things you may never have watched before, or things that you've watched as children, such as Wall-E or I Am Legend, and you'll see things you never saw before.
And in fairy tales and fantasy, we might look at some of the tales that you know or think you know, and look at how some other more modern authors have interpreted them in ways that have sometimes made us disquieting, but have sometimes also illuminated us as to what kind of world we live in and what kinds of things human beings are now interested by and what their curiosity is piqued by. We also may watch some films with a different eye, looking at how the story changes over time because human beings are changing over time.
No matter what, we're going to be exploring fears. We're going to be exploring how to control them, how to shape them, and where they might lead us in the future.
And also, I think, aspirations and reflections on humanity.
Hi guys, my name is Miss Gail Rain and I'm an English teacher here at Oceanside High School, and I want to talk to you today about a course that I've been teaching. It's the seminar on Utopia and Dystopia. And in this class, we look at what is essential for a perfect society. What is essential in a utopia, in this blissful idea of perfection? And then what happens when this blissful idea of perfection becomes tightly controlled? What happens to the people and the government when controls get tighter? And then we flip the idea on its head. Wow, here we are in a dystopia. Controls are tight, people sense constant surveillance, they feel dehumanized. And the government is this oppressive form of control. We end up in this land of annihilation and doom. And we ask big questions like, how much control should a government have over a society? How much control should people have as a voice in their government? And where does this fine line lay between control from government and what the people need in order to reach their human potential? We also think about the idea of why are we totally obsessed with dystopias nowadays? Nowadays, everyone seems to be rushing to the theaters to watch Hunger Games and Divergent and all of these stories of absolute doom. Why are we so into it right now? What's the deal with that? And we think about the idea of why now are our young people into these stories of vampires and zombies and mass annihilation. You know, it must say something about our culture. And interestingly, what it's saying is not that we are terrible people, but that we're looking for an idea of hope. We can look at these exaggerated worst case scenarios and say, how can we avoid these terrible scenarios? And how can we start a new trajectory towards hope, towards a better idea of humanity? So I hope that you'll join us in the English seminar on utopian and dystopian literature. You'll spend a semester with me, and then at midterms, you'll flip and spend a semester with another teacher teaching a different seminar, and you'll look at a whole different aspect of literature.
Hi, I'm Miss Holden, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about the Shakespeare course for senior seminar. I think very often students become intimidated when they hear about a class that's all about Shakespeare, and I understand why, but I'm here to tell you that it's really not that difficult. The work is really tailored to the average 12th grade Regents student, so it really focuses on your abilities and your skill level. I would recommend this course to any student who enjoyed reading Romeo and Juliet or Hamlet. The course will give you the opportunity to study additional works of literature by Shakespeare, such as Othello and even maybe one of his comedies. In addition to doing the Shakespearean literature, the course also focuses on artists who've been inspired by Shakespeare, which gives us the opportunity to bring in some more modern literature into the classroom. The name of the class is Shakespeare in the Modern World. I hope you give it a chance.
The first rule about contemporary literature is that you don't talk about contemporary literature. The second rule is that you don't talk about contemporary literature. But that's what we do in contemporary literature. We talk about contemporary literature. We talk about books that have been written since some of you have been born, which is unusual in class. A lot of times you guys have been reading things that are decades or centuries old, and this course is going to focus on things that were written in the 90s and since 2000. The big books that we're reading in class have been published in either 1996, 1997, 2010, or 2012. We have Junot Diaz on our curriculum, and he is a writer that immigrated from the Dominican Republic and lived in New Jersey, and writes from a perspective that is much more real to a modern day reader than somebody who's been dead for a couple of centuries. And hopefully that resonates with you. And if you think that sounds interesting, then this is what you're looking for. We read The Laramie Project, which was published in 1997. The Laramie Project was at the beginning of the 24-hour news cycle and was new to those of us that remember it. But now it seems mild compared to the maelstrom of media activity we see today. Laramie could be any town, USA. And with the violence around us today that we hear about in the news, it's a fascinating study to look at how violence can rock a small town, especially with something that seems bizarre to us today, the murder of a homosexual college student who was left in a field to die simply because he was gay. The national coverage of stories like this, it moves quickly. And the story of the town and the people who've been severely changed and altered are what we get to see happen when we read The Laramie Project. So Junot Diaz brings the immigrant experience to life on his pages and writes with an enthusiasm and passion that is not matched. He won the Pulitzer Prize for bringing stories and characters like Junior to life, and it makes us, the reader, engaged and shocks us, but interests us in a way that's going to stay with us long after we've closed the book. So we're looking at things from different perspectives, and it's an exciting class that has a lot of new things, and as I said, things that are being written by authors who are still writing. So if you find somebody that you like in this class, you can say, oh, I wonder what they are writing right now, because chances are they still are, when in other classes you can find the other things that they've read, but they're not writing anything new, because they've been dead for too long.
We love English.
Take the graphic novel class.
Take Shakespeare.
No, take
the
Utopia,
graphic novel
Dystopia.
class.